Hi, Arcfieldweather.com. Meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday morning, August the 21st. Pretty quiet weather pattern across much of the nation. Beautiful air mass across the Great Lakes, the Midwest, the Mid-Atlantic region, the Northeast U.S. It stays very comfortable in that part of the nation for the next few days. Hot weather out across the Western Plains, Rocky Mountain states over the next few days. However, even there are signs of some cooler than normal air moving in, certainly during the next 7 to 10 days or so. In other words, no sustained extreme heat is in sight for much of the nation as we go through the remainder of the month of August. Due to the quiet nature of the weather pattern across the nation, I thought we'd kind of touch upon several different topics today. First of all, let's take a look here at sea surface temperatures around the globe. This is the sea surface temperature anomaly map for right now. We actually showed this the other day, the La Nina right here over the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean. By no means is it a strong La Nina. It looks like a weak to maybe a moderate La Nina pattern right now. And we'll show the 7-day temperature change next here, and quite interesting in that it is not strengthening. It looks like it'll remain intact as a La Nina, cooler than normal conditions over the next several weeks as we move deeper and deeper into the tropical season, which peaks in mid-September for the Atlantic basin. But it certainly does not show signs of it strengthening into anything like a strong La Nina. So this is La Nina, cooler than normal waters off the west coast of South America and extending all the way out into the central equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean. A couple of other areas of interest right here. We see cooler than normal temperatures here in this part of the Atlantic Ocean. That is as a result of Ernesto passing overhead last week and this past weekend, upwelling underneath the center of Hurricane Ernesto, that I think peaked as a Category 2 hurricane, brought some colder water from underneath the surface up to the surface, and indeed we have colder than normal conditions right now in the western Atlantic Ocean. A couple other areas of interest we'll monitor over the next several weeks: cooler than normal conditions out across the North Pacific and cooler than normal conditions across the North Atlantic. It's kind of interesting and something we'll monitor over the next several weeks. Now, this is that 7-day change in temperatures. The previous map was sea surface temperature anomalies as it stands today, Wednesday, August 21st. This is the past 7 days. Here is that La Nina region, and notice it's a mixed bag. Some areas warmer than normal over the past 7 days, some colder than normal. So this is certainly not suggesting that La Nina will strengthen anytime in the near term here. It looks like just a mixed bag over the past 7 days. So what looks like a weak to maybe a moderate La Nina looks like it will remain a weak to moderate La Nina, at least in the foreseeable future. Something we'll monitor over the next several weeks, not only as we go deeper and deeper into the tropical season, but as we start heading into the winter season for the Northern Hemisphere. Also, 7-day temperature change out here. This is all as a result of Ernesto. It actually has led to some colder than normal conditions, and this is just the past 7-day temperature change along the surface in the western Atlantic. A big drop in temperatures as Ernesto again passes overhead here. It resulted in upwelling, which brings colder water from underneath up to the surface. So a big temperature change right here in the western part of the Atlantic Ocean. Well, now that we've taken a look at the sea surface temperature conditions across the globe, let's take a look at the latest tropical activity. There is none. It's kind of surprising. We're in the third week of August. Usually the tropical season ramps up significantly this time of the year, but we have a quiet weather pattern across the tropics for the next several days, it looks like. And again, that area of now colder than normal sea surface temperatures right around in this region right here, that will be an inhibiting factor as well for the foreseeable future. So Ernesto passed by Puerto Rico, which is right here, impacted Bermuda pretty much in this fashion, and is now off and weakening out over the very North Atlantic Ocean, and left behind a cold pool of water right in the western Atlantic. Well, let's shift gears now. We looked at the tropical scene. We looked at sea surface temperatures. Now let's go up to the north. This is the temperature pattern across the Arctic region, really 80 degrees latitude north to the pole. And we've featured this. We've talked about this kind of a plot here on an occasional basis here at arcfieldweather.com. This is the temperature pattern across the Arctic region from the beginning of this year, January, which is right here, and up to the current day, which is right here. The orange represents the actual temperature observations. Notice warmer than normal conditions, which has been typical for the past couple of decades in the cold season, in the 9 months that surround the summertime. This is the summertime time frame right here, June, July, and August. And as has been a very consistent pattern, this summer has been nearly normal up in the Arctic region. You notice normal temperatures are not far at all from the freezing line. This is the 0 degrees Celsius line right here, and the blue represents the climatological averages. So they're pretty close to freezing, maybe a little bit above freezing this time of the year. So when you have nearly normal temperatures, you're not going to have significant melting of the Arctic ice because it's not far above the freezing mark. And this has been a very consistent pattern of nearly normal temperatures in the summer melting season across the Arctic. And we're now almost at the end of that summer season up across the Arctic region as we close in on the latter part of August here. And again, it's been another summer, much like the last several decades, of nearly normal temperatures during the summertime. Now, I suspect as it goes down closer and closer through the fall into the winter, we may have above normal temperatures, certainly for the last few months of the year, but it's way below the freezing mark on average, so that does not contribute to melting of the Arctic sea ice. Well, speaking of the Arctic, let's take a look at the forecast map for the next 10 days by last night's 0Z run of the GFS. And indeed, we have some snowfall. This is the total snowfall map for the next 10 days, the accumulated snowfall over the next 10 days. First of all, up here over Greenland, some significant snow across the western part of Greenland over the next 10 days, and really throughout the Arctic region here. This goes all the way out to the end of the month, to August 31st. Quite a bit of snowfall. We'll certainly monitor this more and more as we head towards the winter season in the northern hemisphere. But so this is not all that surprising as we're approaching the end of August. But this is interesting here. We're starting to see some snowfall here out across the northern Rockies over the next 10 days here. This is Wyoming and Montana and all the way up into the southwestern part of Canada. Snow is beginning to show up on the maps here. Again, this is over the next 10 days. We're getting some accumulating snow over those higher elevations in the northern Rocky states. Well, a couple other items of interest here. Let's now take a look at the temperature pattern across the U.S., not only today on Wednesday here, but over the next several days. And again, really don't see sustained extreme heat pretty much anywhere across the nation. It does indeed get quite hot across the western plains and the Rocky Mountain states later this week for a few days, but even there, it looks like it will not go on to the end of the month. We'll see in a second here, there'll be some colder air intrusions into even that part of the nation. A beautiful air mass in place as we begin the day here on Wednesday, with much cooler than normal air across the Great Lakes, the Midwest, the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast U.S., and that comfortable air mass stays in place really right through the end of the work week here. Places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, all the way out to Chicago and up to Boston. Very nice weather, not only today, but for the next few days. Meanwhile, out across the western plains, the Rocky Mountain states, this is where you get some hotter than normal conditions over the next few days. Now, let's kind of push forward here quickly. Again, this cool air mass hangs around for the next few days. Here we are on Thursday, and then into the day on Friday. Notice out in the western part of the nation, a much cooler than normal air mass pushes in off the Pacific Ocean by the end of this work week here. This is a couple days away here on Friday. Much below normal temperatures. California, Washington and Oregon, and still hanging on with some cooler than normal conditions across the eastern third of the nation as of Friday. Now let's move forward here, and again, a lot of the hot weather is confined to the Rocky Mountain states and the central and western plains here as we get into the upcoming weekend, but it's hanging on with this very chilly air mass for this time of the year out across the western states. And then we'll move forward here, and again I mentioned that this is the area to look for the hottest weather over the next several days, but even there is hope down the road here. We'll see that in a moment. Here we go into the second half of the upcoming weekend, and here we go with some cooler than normal air starting to show up here by early next week into the southwestern part of Canada, and that just drops south and east into the same area that will experience a lot of hot weather over the next few days here. And remember, we talked about that snowfall possibility, Wyoming, Montana, over the next 10 days. Well, this is that air mass that certainly can result in some snowfall in the northern Rockies, maybe even extending into the northern plains. We'll have to take a look. This is all the way out to the end of next week, Friday, August 30th. Again, quite a change from the hotter than normal conditions over the next few days in this part of the nation to much colder than normal later next week. And again, Montana, Wyoming, maybe Idaho as well. That includes the possibility of some accumulating snow. Well, the last image I'd like to show is of the sun. We are going all over the place today with a whole bunch of items we're covering. This is the latest image of the sun. A lot of sunspots right now. We are in solar cycle 25. It's nearing the maximum phase for solar cycle 25. Probably sometime early to middle next year, 2025, we may reach the peak of solar cycle 25. This has been a very active month, the month of August, in terms of sunspots. This is the latest image. We have large regions right here, and some of these are right now facing the Earth directly. So if there's any kind of a coronal mass ejection out of these sunspots over the next day or two, and maybe this one over the next few days, because these rotate in this fashion. They're rotating in this fashion like this. So these are the areas to watch in terms of facing the Earth directly over the next few days. Again, if there is any kind of a coronal mass ejection, that could lead to some northern lights, for example, later on this week. But a very active looking sun right now, and if it remains very active in terms of sunspots over the next 10 days or so through the rest of August, this month could turn out to be the most active in more than 20 years, really since the peak of not the last one, but the prior one, solar cycle 23. Again, it's been a very active month. Not surprising that we are in the almost the end game of climbing up to that peak for solar cycle 25, and a very active month. If it remains this active over the next 10 days or so, it could be the most active month in terms of the number of sunspots since the peak of solar cycle 23. So that's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.